I was so passionate and eager and hopeful as I began my career as a nurse. It was what I had wanted to be since I was 4 years old. But after a decade of nursing, I found myself dreading every shift, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I tried to imagine myself as anything but a burned out, broken nurse. Maybe I could bake cakes. That brought me joy, and no one ever died in my kitchen. Last chance. As I settled into my role as a home visitor and the basics of onboarding became less of the focus, anxiety began to mount as I approached Rachel's office for reflective supervision. Over the last 10 years, going to my supervisor's office usually meant one of two things. It was time for my annual review, or there was bad news. There were some times that I went to the office desperate for comfort after really devastating losses, but I never left the office feeling any better. One Friday morning, I came to reflective supervision angry, really angry. A client of mine had been experiencing pregnancy and postpartum complications for weeks. I dropped my guard and I told Rachel that even though I had done everything I could, I was afraid her providers were failing to rescue her. She listened and she nodded and she said, "Tell me more about failing to rescue." My patient had been enjoying milkshakes with his daughter one day earlier. The doctor working that night wasn't one of our usual ICU doctors. Each time I called him to give him an update or tell him that my patient was rapidly deteriorating, I interrupted the basketball game he was watching from his call room. I escalated through my chain of command, and finally, he came to my bedside to assess the patient. He half-heartedly touched my patient's foot and turned to leave the room. My anger exploded, and for the first time in my career, I found myself yelling at a doctor. "Hey, this patient is still a full code, and you are failing to rescue him." Hours later, my patient died. I swore to myself that I would never, ever let someone fail to rescue my patient again. Rachel held me as my chest heaved and I soaked her shirt with my tears and running nose. I groaned as all of the fear and pain came rushing out. It felt like I cried for as long as that memory had haunted me. Free to grieve in the safety of her office, I finally released him. And then I felt the fear that was clutching my heart about my client begin to ease. That day, I decided that baking wasn't my exit strategy. A nurse is what I had always wanted to be, and nursing is where I would choose to stay.